Hi there, welcome to Word on Wednesday, our midweek opportunity to pause and reflect on the things we looked at Gather Worship on Sunday. Now, throughout May, we are exploring the theme of faith. And to help us do that, we're looking at the experiences of Joshua and the people of Israel as they move from kind of wandering in the desert and cross into the land of the promise. We're in Joshua 3 verses 1 to 17. The first thing we picked up from the passage is a kind of stating the obvious, really. It's faith means following. Faith means following. When you see the ark move, they're told, you move, you follow it. You haven't been this way before. The ark's going to lead the way. You're going to need to follow it. See, the people could have said they believed that God was going to give them the land. They could have said they believed that God was going to drive out all the occupying people before them. And they could have been kind of sincere in saying they believed. But believing in your head and acting in faith is not the same thing. You see, belief or faith is belief in action. Faith is belief in action. Unless they put one foot in front of the other and follow, they are not acting in faith. In John 13, Jesus gives his disciples this wonderful example of the servant heart that needs to be there if they're going to function as a community of believers. He washes their feet, doesn't he? And tells them to learn to wash one another's feet. And at the end of that, he says, now you know these things. You'll be blessed if you do them. Now you know you'll be blessed if you do. So the blessing isn't in the knowing. The blessing is in the doing. And faith means following. Second thing we picked up is faith builds faith. Faith builds faith. This is how you will know that the Lord is going to drive out all the Canaanites and the Hivites and all the otherites that occupy the land. This is how you will know. This event that they're going to experience, if they act in faith, is going to give them a testimony of God's faithfulness that will help them trust again, act in faith again in the future. It will give them a testimony. Testimonies are powerful things, aren't they? This is how you will know. Why is that important? Well, they're going to be asked to act in faith over and over and over again. And it's like that with us. If we're believers, faith isn't a one-off deal. We say we believe or we act once and it's cracked forever and a day. Acting in faith is a choice that will be put before us each and every day. And a testimony of God's faithfulness will help us to act in faith, won't it? We're in the middle of something called the 200 Project. And it's to mark the fact that our building is 200 years old. We want to celebrate that and celebrate the asset it's been to the community of faith and the wider community during that time. And we want to step out in faith to raise £200,000 for the renovation and then the development of the building to fit it for God's mission in the future. Now, a church having a building project is not a new thing. So what's the issue? Well, it's the timing. The timing. See, this came at the end of last year where we were facing a deficit of thousands of pounds. We're having to ask difficult questions, have difficult conversations about how we're going to cope with this deficit in our finances. And it's then, when we're facing a deficit, that we get this call to step out in faith for £200,000. It's bonkers. Who would do that then? But it really stuck with us. And the reason why is because we twigged early on, it's about the building, but it's not about the building. It's about God calling us to act in faith that we might have a testimony of his faithfulness. See, if you look at the passage, the Jordan is in flood. What lunatic is going to cross a flooded river? Why not just wait till it goes down? It's totally the wrong time to cross. And yet it's the time that God says, go for it. Now's the time. They would have a testimony of God's faithfulness if they acted in faith today. The other thing they had was this kind of bit in the passage where it says, make sure you get a guy from each tribe to take a stone from the middle of the river where the priests are going to stand with the ark. And when they get to the other side, the first place they camp, they put up this pile of stones. What's that about? What's that about? Well, it says, when your children ask, what do these stones mean? You can tell them, this is where the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the Lord. They would have a testimony of God's faithfulness and power that would help them to act in faith again. So the last thing was focus feeds faith. They're told to consecrate themselves. Consecration is about cleanliness, a ritual cleanliness for them, and it was a way of setting themselves apart for the activity of God in them and through them. Consecrate yourselves, for God is going to do amazing things among you. See, they were preparing themselves. Consecration is about preparation. And preparation encourages expectation. It encourages expectation. And we're asking a question, how do we generate expectation of God being active in our life? As believers, do we have that awareness, that openness, the eyes to see and ears to hear? Do we expect him to be active? Or do we think, oh, it always happens to somebody else? It's not going to be active in my life. See, expectation's a powerful thing. C.H. Spurgeon, the Victorian preacher, this young preacher comes up to him one time, and he's kind of complaining about his lack of success in people coming forward when he appeals, when he preaches. And he explains how he does all the hard work. He studies hard, he does the homework. And when he preaches, he gives it his all. He holds nothing back. But when he makes the appeal, people don't seem to come forward. And Spurgeon says, well, you don't expect people to come forward every time you speak, do you? And the guy says, well, of course not. And Spurgeon said, well, that's your problem. Expectation. He didn't have the expectation that God was going to be active, that God was going to be at work in the room, that God was going to be at work in the lives of those he was preaching to. Expectation is a powerful thing. See, focus feeds faith. Focusing on the prospect of God being active in our life will make us open to his call of faith. They had something else to focus on too, and that was the ark. What was the ark? Well, it was this box overlaid with gold, in which was the stone tablets of the Ten Commandments, the basis of the covenant between God and the people. On the top of the box was this lid called the atonement cover, and on the lid were these two kind of angelic beings with their wings stretching over the kind of center of the box, the center of the lid, sometimes referred to as the mercy seat, and it's where God promised to meet Moses. It was kind of where heaven touched earth. So when the people were looking at the ark, what it was symbolizing was the presence of God among them. The presence of God among them. You see, and where was God? Well, he was slap bang in the middle of the act of faith into which he had called them. He wasn't on the other bank shouting at them. He wasn't on the other bank driving them. He was in the midst of the act of faith to which he had called them. God in the midst. It's a powerful thing, isn't it? God in the midst. When we're in those situations where we've kind of stepped out in faith, but the reality is the wind and the waves are becoming ever larger and we're becoming ever smaller. I wonder if we might dare to raise our eyes to look for God in the midst. See, Jesus said in John 14, I am in the Father, you are in me, and I am in you. See, as believers, we are never alone. The Lord is always with us. We are never abandoned in the midst of something. He is with us in the middle of it all. And we need to look for that, to generate the expectation of him being in the midst, the awareness of that. How can we do that? Well, we suggested a really simple prayer, and I'll read it to you in a moment and see if it helps you. Generating expectation. Lord, thank you for the gift of this new day. As you have given it to me, I now give myself to you within it. Give me eyes to see your hand. Give me ears to hear your prompt, and the courage to respond to what I see and hear. A really simple prayer of just a couple of lines. I wonder if you might try that through the rest of the week, to generate that expectation, to make you open to spot the activity of God in your life. Faith means following. Faith builds faith, and focus on the Lord feeds our faith. Well, I don't know where you got with that on Sunday, where it's left you today. But I just want to encourage you. Continue to work with that prayer. Continue to work with that prayer. That as the Lord calls you into faith, you would be equipped to respond. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and may God bless you richly. Amen.